This week, Greg Notch from Expel is with us to discuss generative AI threats and concerns. Then Ev Consovoy from Teleport joins us to talk about infrastructure security and building a security business around open source. Finally, in the enterprise security news, the year kicks off with 12 funding announcements and 9 acquisitions. Several new companies have also emerged. We also have a few dumpster fires burning. We kick off the year with lots of AI news and stories. And also the annual Consumer Electronics Show gives us previews of the invasive and insecure horrors that will be unleashed upon us this year. New Yorkers get right to repair. Polish trains don't. Network-connected torque wrenches can be hacked. Microsoft shares incident response best practices. They've been practicing a lot recently. Apple Vision Pro, Tetris, and skydiving iPhones. All that and more on this episode of Enterprise Security Weekly.
This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network.
Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island. It's the show where we talk security vendors and aren't afraid to name names. It's Enterprise Security Weekly.
Identity is at the core of every great digital experience. Ping Identity's solutions support the scale, flexibility, and resiliency required by enterprise-level IT teams for lasting digital transformation. With 99.99% uptime and over 3 billion identities under management, they're the only identity vendor that's proven to champion the scale, performance, and security of large enterprises. That's why Ping Identity champions your unique identity needs. They give you the tools to offer your users the right access at the right times, no matter how they connect with you. Visit securityweekly.com/Ping Identity to learn more.
Welcome to Enterprise Security Weekly and happy National Step in a Puddle and Splash Your Friends Day. You officially have permission from me to do this. This is episode 345, recorded on Thursday, January 11th, 2024. I'm your host, Adrian Sanabria, and joining me is the Admiral of AI, the Captain of Content, Katie Teitler-Santullo. How are you, Katie?
I am well. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm a little nervous because I've got a new setup in a different house here. This will be the summer podcast location, and I like it because I can set up stuff behind me. I've got a little bit more room to do that. My friend Ross Halleluch's book that just came out, Cyber for Builders, pretty interesting one, and I get quoted a little bit, or he gave me like a little, he puts expert quotes at the end of each article. And I got the article on how to destroy a startup, or this chapter, the chapter on how to destroy a startup. I've got a little quote at the end of that one. So that was fun. How are you doing? How's the weather up there? Did you get dumped on with a bunch of snow?
Not really. So there was all this hype, of course, because you have to have hype about weather. And it really just depended where in New England you were. Where I live, we got maybe 3 inches. Where my parents live, they got about 8 inches. And where my husband's parents live, now we're all within like a 12 to 15 mile radius, they got probably 10 inches. So it was, I'm sitting here going, this is not a snow day. And yet my husband's off shoveling 10 inches of snow from his parents' driveway. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah, I still stayed home, watched football, had some popcorn, pretended it was a real snow day.
Nice. So definitely not jumping in puddles up there, jumping in drifts of snow maybe. But down here, certainly.
No, there's no snow anymore because whatever it was, yesterday, there was something like 2 inches of rain. So all of the snow is gone, which where I live is a good thing because it usually turns black and brown and dirty and grimy pretty quickly.
Oh, yeah. I'm familiar with that. I used to live up in New England. I know the black snow well. That's been hanging around.
It's so beautiful when it falls and it blankets everything and it's peaceful. And then a day later, you're like, ugh.
Yeah. Yeah. It gets super nasty. Yeah. Very familiar with that. All right, a quick announcement here. Security Weekly listeners, cyber threats are evolving. Is your organization keeping up? The 2023 Cybersecurity Year in Review is here. Uncover the latest challenges and strategic responses in CRA's 2023 Cybersecurity Year in Review, sponsored by RSA Conference. From the impact of generative AI to the risks of ransomware to navigating new SEC rulings, get ahead for 2024 with your free copy. Download the report at securityweekly.com/year in review 2023. All right, and with that, today's topic is predicting generative AI threats and concerns in 2024. We're excited to have Greg Notch, Expel's CISO, with us today. If you're not aware, Expel, not to be confused with Excel, even though their logos are similar, is a very well-regarded MDR and security consulting firm. Just to be clear, Expel is not sponsoring today's interview, but thanks to them for lending Greg to us today for this timely conversation. And a fun fact, Greg spent 15 years as the CISO for the National Hockey League. Welcome to the show, Greg.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And I always wondered that. Every time I see the logo for Expel, I think Excel, and I'm like, was it intentional that it looks so similar, like the same color, the same X as the logo for Excel? Is that like an inside joke?
I have no idea. I don't work in marketing. I think they were looking to make it look a little bit different than all of the red and black security companies that were out there.
I mean, it certainly does. I don't dislike the branding or the logo. I think it's kind of smart to lean into that. All right. So, as we spoke about before, Greg, when we were prepping for this interview, we focused a lot on generative AI last year. We talked a lot about the threats. We even had an AI special where we had Daniel Miessler come on. And still, even since then, I think that was midway through the year in 2023, so much has happened. There's so many more tools out there. There's so many more announcements on how people are using them. At CES, we've got a lot of devices, hardware devices that are leaning almost entirely on AI. You've got everything from the Meta glasses, which came out last year, to I was just looking into a device called Rabbit that is mostly leans on generative AI. And then there's the clip that you're supposed to wear in your shirt or something like that. It's really interesting how quickly it's just shown up in consumer devices. I would have expected it to take a couple years or so, but apparently not.
Yeah, I will not be wearing any clips for generative AI connectivity. I mean, that's the amazing thing about having built all of the network infrastructure and the cloud and all of the sort of go fast infrastructure we've built over the last couple of decades, that once AI showed up, like it going from like ideas to something you can clip on your lapel happens, at light speed.
Yeah, I'm actually, I'm on both sides. I'm pretty excited about some of it. So I do have the Meta Ray-Ban glasses, and I'm a bit frustrated I can't get into the early access program because like one of the big features that they touted that is now in beta testing, some people get to beta test it, I can't. But it basically things like, what type of plant is this that I'm looking at? Or, yeah, or if
I love that feature in iPhones. Like the iPhone photo app will like let you take a picture and then it'll identify dogs or plants or whatever. But having that in real time on the glasses would be awesome.
Yeah, literally, like there's no phone to take out of your pocket. You just say, Meta, tell me what I'm looking at, and it'll do its best to tell you. And I'm really eager to see how accurate it is, especially like if you're doing touristy things, like I'm sure the Eiffel Tower's super easy, like stuff where people are not going to ask it about that. It's going to be the tougher stuff, like plants and maybe products and things like that. Where can I buy this? Like pretty normal for people to pull out their phones and look up the price of something on Amazon while they're in a physical store, right? To see if there's a big price difference. Now you'll be able to do that without pulling out the phone.
Yeah, I've had this dream of like going to big conferences like RSA or maybe CES and having a pair of glasses like this as I walk around the show floor, and it shows me like who the company is and maybe how much funding they've raised and when the last time they raised. Yeah. So, like some sort of AR like overlay to help me navigate a trade show and understand like, oh, this is available to buy now. I mean, I think there's a lot of opportunity there. The future's bright.
Yeah, so they can do that today. You can say, you're going to do it all with your voice, but you can do basically anything you can do with a Google search. In fact, better than a Google search, because I don't know about you, but they've been letting me down lately. I've been using ChatGPT to answer questions like that, like how much funding was raised. They very easily get Google searches get confused, and you get too many sponsored results in it, and it's just
I switched to
tough for me to.
I switched to Kagi probably, I don't know, 6 or 8 months ago from Google search for that reason. But also I'm heavily using ChatGPT for exactly the same stuff.
How do you spell that?
Kagi.
Okay, yeah, that's exactly what I would have thought. I've been using you.com.
Okay.
As my search engine. I didn't know about Kagi. And this kind of highlights our conversation today, right? Like things are happening so fast. We're both using search engines that neither of us have heard of before.
I know, right? Amazing.
What a year 2024 is going to be. So we've been talking about consumer devices and our personal workflows and things like that. But I think on the in things that we're more hopeful about. But I think the security teams really need to be thinking about how enterprises are going to use it, because it's coming into enterprises just as quickly. And even you don't even have to be adopting generative AI to get it, because Microsoft is shoving it into everything. Apparently, if you order new Microsoft Surface laptops, in the future, they're going to have a dedicated AI button. Did you see that announcement where they're changing keyboards?
Yeah, hopefully it works better than the Windows key.
Yeah. So, and apparently they're replacing that menu key, which I never really used anyway. Like I know what it does, but it does the same thing as the right click button on the mouse. So
that's what I meant. I didn't mean the Windows key. I meant that button that I think I've clicked twice ever.
Right. Exactly. So it's, that'll be interesting, but yeah, what are you hearing from, you guys have enterprise clients, like what are the kind of concerns that you're hearing, and what are your main concerns in terms of, let's first talk about the kind of AI adoption that we don't really have a choice in. Existing products we already own are just getting these LLM AI based features shoved into them.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a new. To me, I think there's two ways of thought on this right now. One are the people who are like, well, this is just more third-party risk management for me. I have more third and fourth parties, which I think what you're talking about, Microsoft putting generative AI into their products, or Google, or Atlassian, or whatever your enterprise software stack includes. You're now getting more sub-processors or more third parties generating AI. Your data is going more places. And then there are the folks who are taking a more, I guess I would say, risk approach to it, where they view all of this as extremely high risk. They're worried about the training data. They're worried about bias. They're worried about a lot of the other more nuanced legal issues around, who's generated content owned by, and what impact does that have? And I'd say there's probably a third subset of people who are thinking about the generated content like code, right? Well, I'm using Copilot to generate pieces of my product, or I'm using Copilot to generate code. Does that have security properties that I need to start to be concerned about? So I think, it sort of depends on where you fall on the, AI sky is falling. How much risk, how much control do I want to bring to my environment to solve that problem?
Yeah, and for my own use, it's something we've been doing a lot here in the show. We've been, I'm a firm believer that you have to try out new technology, which is why I have those Ray-Ban glasses in the first place. Is, I feel like you have to experience it. Like, it's easy to see a product come out, to see the announcement and say, oh, that's terrible, it's going to destroy the human race, but like we said that about smartphones, right? Like, the iPhone was to be kept out of the enterprise at all costs back in the early days. Of course, it didn't have any enterprise features or anything like that, but executives wanted their email on there. They wanted to use it for productivity, and eventually it came in. So I think early adoption is important for at least some folks on the security side to understand really what they're potentially saying no to, or getting forced to adopt. So the question here is kind of, My opinion, I think we should be training employees right now because AI is really, really good at some things and really, really terrible at other things. You mentioned bias. What do you think in terms of like should we be just ripping off the Band-Aid and training employees today, or should we, should that be kind of a combined approach with preventing some of it from coming into the enterprise? Of course, each business is going to be different, so it's probably one of those it depends type of answers I've thrown at you.
Well, sure, it depends, but I think the answer is it's a use case based thing, right? And just like every other piece of software that you might bring in, or every other process you might put in your organization, I think there's a lot of overblown hype about what the technology can do and what it can't do. And to your point, I think you have to try it and you have to see it and you have to be willing to be an early adopter and, with caution, implement these technologies. However, like the use cases matter. For example, it would be much different for me to write marketing copy than for me to send customer data to ChatGPT. Those are fundamentally different, like, risk profiles. And so you can experiment with one without doing the other. And it's not an all or nothing thing. You can make choices about what things that you want to try. And then you can play to the strengths of the new technology, just like every other new tech that's come out in the last 30 years.
Yeah. And the WGA, the Writers Guild of America, managed to get AI banned for using it to write things. But I don't really see that happening in the enterprise. So do you see an issue in the enterprise with copyright law or with things that have been generated by AI? Like, I know traditionally, marketing teams and, something I tried to do personally is always get royalty-free images or make sure I pay for my images, because it's just so easy to copy and paste stuff off the internet and put it in your slides for a talk or even in a sales deck or something like that. It's generally frowned upon, but, it seems like everybody does it. Now that you can just generate those images, it's, what kind of guidance would you give there in terms of getting around copyright issues or subscriptions to, stock image sites and stuff like that and just generating it instead?
Yeah, I'm not a lawyer, but I would say the definition of derivative works is about to get overhauled. And I think you're already seeing when, like, New York Times suing ChatGPT for sort of republic and I believe some book authors as well. I mean, I think there's litigation risk that's going to happen here, like where the law ends up in terms of copyright and how derivative works are used. I mean, if you're a writer or a creative professional, this train is coming. And so the question is, like, how are we going to protect those folks and their livelihoods, but also, like, lean into the technology it's going to be used regardless. So the question is, how are we going to build a legal framework that makes sense? The same is true for code. Same is true for images. Same is true for video. I mean, the content generation side of this thing is its strength. And so I think we're just going to see a world where that happens. It's also, some scary weakness of it, right? Generated video and generated audio presents, a huge security risk in some instances. But for the copyright part of it, it's 2024. We're going to see some interesting court cases. That's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Any questions here, Katie?
Yeah, I mean, sort of a comment/question. I've been playing around with it too, because a large part of my job is writing. Now, I won't use it for actually writing my articles with my newsletter that I publish every other week, but I will use it to gather data. I will test out what it will come up with if I put in certain prompts. At this stage, I feel it's definitely not ready to write the kind of articles I want to write, because I want my voice. There's not enough training data on me. There will never be enough. So if you were to advise somebody to get started, now there are different categories, right? Like, if you're writing, that's one thing, like you said. If you're creating images, that's another thing. But if you're dealing with some more proprietary data, how do you recommend people start, and how does that break down when you're talking about different roles? A security practitioner like yourself, you have to approach it very differently than I would.
Sure. I'll say a couple of things. One, I think it's good for writing first drafts. and synthesizing information, I would not, sometimes it's easier to edit something that's already been written than it is to write it whole cloth. And so in that way, refining ChatGPT prompts is sometimes helpful, especially if what you're trying to write has been written before. So a good example I use is like sometimes if I want to first crack at like a security policy, like, hey, what things should I include in an exceptions policy? Or I want to see how others have approached, I don't know, like changes to their privacy policy or other things like that. I might have ChatGPT go out and pull me some examples and put some text in front of me to react to. I'm still going to write it. I'm still going to go through it. But it's sometimes a helpful way for first drafting.
100%. Yeah. Ideation is huge. It's a huge opportunity, I think.
Yeah. The blank page problem, right?
Go ahead.
The blank page problem.
Yep, totally. For security practitioners, it's a little dicier, right? Because you need to provide context, and you might need to put data into these things that is proprietary in some way. So I don't differentiate between like different types of security data. I would just say, look, the data is either proprietary to your business, secret in some way, or it's not, and you're now choosing to expose it to one or more third parties. And so it's the same decision matrix of like, well, would I put this into a Google Doc? Maybe, because I have a contract with Google and like I have reasonable respect for their privacy practices and all of that. Would I put it into, a random web form on 8chan? Probably not, right? And so how I view where these, where the data is going is the same, it's the same question I would ask about anything else. I mean, this has come up before with products like Writer or Grammarly, where, folks were, there were big concerns about data being exposed to these third and fourth parties by practitioners or by writers. And, we've worked through that and we've managed to find ways to make that work. So I feel like we're just in that place where we haven't gotten the rules of the road well established.
Yeah, I actually know a bunch of CISOs who have banned Grammarly in their organizations. Where that's
they did
just
get breached, right? Like there's that, right? And then had pretty awful privacy policies and pretty awful security policies. I think it's gotten somewhat better over time. My understanding is they recognize the market required them to do that if they wanted to survive. We don't use it, so I couldn't tell you.
I think it's an amazingly helpful tool. I think it's actually improved how I write. It's made me aware of a lot of writing issues that I was just totally unaware of before I started using it. But yeah, I mean, the permissions are everything, right? Like it needs access to everywhere you might type text.
Yeah, this is all use case driven stuff. I mean, again, you have a different lens on a SOC analyst than you do on, a social media intern.
Right. Yeah, true. So, speaking of that, now with OpenAI has their ChatGPT Enterprise, and I think a day or two ago they just announced ChatGPT for Teams, which, I think is more about just making it easier for you to share what you're working on, but doesn't really add anything additional to Enterprise. But with Enterprise saying, hey, we're not going to use any of this data that you input as training, like, does it then become more of just another SaaS application like Google Drive? Like I'm sticking my data in Google Drive and this is just another SaaS? Or are there still other concerns that you see people having about putting proprietary customer data or company data into some of these tools, either as prompts or as training data? Well, like you can put into custom training data, you can make your own GPTs, you can give it your own data set, right?
Yeah, I think that's the nuance. So generally speaking, if you have an enterprise agreement with them where they're agreeing to protect your data, I do view it as another SaaS platform. However, it gets a little murky when you talk about like training and refining prompting sets and they're storing that on their servers. They're agreeing not to show that data to any other customers or use that to train any future models. And I think, you have to have confidence in your contractual protections at that moment. I think the real risk or the newish risk of what ChatGPT is now putting out there is their marketplace, their app store, and all of the integrations that are that are there, right? So imagine a scenario where I have a SOC analyst who has an IP address that they're about to put in a ChatGPT prompt, and they put it in there, but there's a bunch of other parties where, like, oh, that got sent off to Microsoft for for a search, or maybe this other place to get turned into a PDF, or there's some other marketplace app that got added into ChatGPT. Like, you really, like, if you were thinking about writing your sub-processor list to disclose to your customers, and you're like, I really have no idea where that data went. That's why I think, it's just unknown risk. And we've had this problem with SaaS forever, right? You take a platform like Monday that's storing files in some file provider that, is behind that's not them, right? You have this exact same kind.
So, sorry, continue. Finish what you're saying. I didn't mean to interrupt.
So you have this third and fourth parties, like we're saying, risk in SaaS as well. I think, though, like ChatGPT just opened up their marketplace. I think it was today or yesterday. Right. It's like, oh, great. Like, now I have to figure out how to govern in ChatGPT what plugins people are able to access. It's like the browser problem all over again, where I'm thinking about what plugins have they installed, or what other things have been added to the mix. And so even if I trust ChatGPT, even if I trust OpenAI or ChatGPT, now I'm like, well, wait, who else is in the mix? And I think that's a hard thing to wrap your arms around.
Yeah, now it's sending your data off to a Wolfram Alpha, or just some website, or Kayak, depending on the use case, right?
Yep. And so then now when you're trying to govern that as a corporation, and it's sensitive data, or it's customer data, or it's GDPR, regulated privacy data, you have then you have jurisdictional questions, right? Like, well, did you ship that data off to somewhere where Privacy Shield isn't covering it? Like, I don't know. And so those are all things that CISOs and security teams and privacy teams are all going to have to work through as this kind of expands.
Isn't this in a way just an advancement of a lot of other things that we've adopted? Like Salesforce, for instance, you are definitely putting proprietary information in there, and then there are tools within the tool to analyze the data, to create reports. So it's not like this is unprecedented. I understand it's at a different scale. We're using different types of data, but like with mobile, like with cloud, before it, shouldn't there be some lessons learned that maybe alleviate some fears about using it? Because we've seen this before. It's just a bigger and slightly more sophisticated scale, but we expect technology to do that, or should.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I don't think the new risks are in this. The new risks by generative AI are in this area. I think it's more SaaS effectively. Or if you decide to run your own models, if you go to Hugging Face or grab one of the Llama models and run it inside your own environment, that's just like you downloaded you have a software supply chain for you. You went and grabbed code from someone else, and now you have to assess the risk of it. So I don't think there's a lot new to say about these types of use cases. I think all of the more interesting risks are in areas because of the features that generative AI unlocks. And I think that's probably something, more interesting to talk about, like being able to generate someone's likeness, or being able to generate their audio of them, or the potential impacts of fake stuff in the world. Like those are the real, I say larger risks, or the risk of generated code that has vulnerabilities. Those kinds of things where those are new risks to consider, and those are new things to worry about how AI might impact your business, as opposed to really it's like yet another SaaS that I have limited ability to control my risk around.
Yeah, so shifting a little bit to security specific use cases, have you seen any areas where you feel like any workflows or areas within cybersecurity where you feel like some of these new AI tools would be a slam dunk, to solve some problems, or areas where it's vastly overhyped? Just curious about your thoughts on that in general.
On the defender side, I think like rolling through massive piles of data and deriving insights, AI and really ML before it. I mean, it should be a slam dunk. It should make defenders better on a long enough time scale. The problem is what happens before all of that matures, because it also enables novel attack problems that we're not equipped to solve right now. And so I think you could talk about like the defenders are, this should make, data lakes of security information far easier to derive insights from, pattern matching, that sort of shared intelligence should be better. But it's going to be a while before all the models are trained and tuned tuned for your environment. I think we've got some time before that happens. But in the interim, we have the increased attack surface. So it's a bit of a balance.
Okay. And what are some of those novel, you mentioned novel attacks against some of these. Are you talking about like prompt injection?
No, I'm actually thinking more of things like identity verification. If we're in a world where I'm onboarding people into my environment and I can't validate who they are because the video of them or the audio of them is generated, how can I expect a service desk person to be able to validate the identity of someone, say adding a new Okta device to their corporate profile, if it sounds like them on the phone or the video of them looks good, like all of those problems are coming. And if you don't have strong identity and root of trust there, like you're relying on things that you might not be able to rely on, and that scares me a little bit.
Yeah, back to things like YubiKeys and physical authentication devices. It was so funny.
What do you do when someone loses one, right? What do you do when exactly. I lost my YubiKey and I need a new one?
Yeah, I personally, I see the value of security keys, but I hate them because I had to use RSA tokens, hard tokens, for the longest time. And once we got push notifications and stuff like that, and I understand the issues and the challenges with attacks against that, like MFA bombing and all that. But I'm done having things on keychains personally, like physical things you can break. Yeah.
I mean, you're less likely to leave your phone somewhere than a YubiKey, let's face it.
Yeah, and I've had it wasn't a YubiKey, it was a different brand, one that was a little bit cheaper, but I had one break off in a USB port once. Like the USB-C connector just snapped off of the security key. I was like, okay, I'm glad I registered 2 different keys with this with AWS.
Yep, sweet.
Yeah. So, what do we think we're seeing? Like, this has all happened so fast. I mean, you're talking about things maturing, but at least on the consumer side and with ChatGPT specifically and the stuff that Google and Microsoft are rolling out, seems like things are going pretty fast. What are your thoughts on 2024? What should we be preparing for? How can we be preparing for the stuff that's coming down the pike?
Look, I mean, because it's going so fast, I think our ability to prepare for it is limited. I think it's like everything else a security team has to tackle. It's going to have to be on a case-by-case basis. And the one thing that I would say is, at least some of the security industry's learned, is we can't be the department of no. We can't be stopping this stuff. The business is going to look to do it. And so we have to figure out how what controls that we are going to be able to put in place and how we're going to be able to say yes to the folks that want to use these technologies in their environment. And so I think the key skill is being able to understand how it's being used. And to understand how it works, to your point, it's you got to play with it. You can't guess about how it works. You really need to spend some time with it so that you understand when someone in your business says, "Look, I want to do this. I want to have these customer service workflows, or I want to do something else with this, that with customer data, you have a way of understanding what they're trying to do, and you're able to be agile with this stuff because it's going to keep coming. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw some other like Chat GPT level innovation in 2024. Like, hey, this is some brand new thing that we didn't think was coming for 5 years, but here it is now, and you can use it for $20 a month. And I think we'll see one of those this year, and we'll adapt to that too.
Yeah. So it sounds like we're going to have to pick and choose our battles. We're going to have to be a little more strategic about, obviously we can't say no to everything. The potential for productivity gains here and increased revenue that comes, downstream of all that is just too high to say no to everything. So, it's I guess it's great advice to use it yourself, so that you can tell between where your fears are overblown and where they're justified, right?
Yeah, I mean, the wave on the hype cycle will crest on some of this stuff. We won't use it for everything. But we'll know what it's good at. At least the generative AI is like, oh, these use cases make sense for most businesses to implement, and this is the way you do it. So that wave will crest. But just given the scope of the technology and the level of investment that's going that direction right now, and the people that are working on it, I fully expect yet more waves to crest of new and improved versions of other types of AI that are, imagine something like the AlphaGo being available for business decision support. Like, imagine that's available to businesses, in the back half of 2024. Like, there'll be some real conversations about how, FP&A and other parts of companies use that sort of thing to help make their businesses better.
So I'm a big believer in, just jumping in and using it, because I don't want my skill set to be obsolete in 2 to 5 years, right? But it's a little scary for people. And I found yesterday, actually, one of my colleagues sent me a video that he had done a training with one of our engineers who has been using it for a long time, because he's responsible for incorporating AI, LLM, whatever however you want to term it, into our product. And so getting some actual training was very helpful for me, because even though, I have ChatGPT on my computer, I use it for various things every once in a while. What do you recommend people do? Is it more of a see how it goes for you? Are there formal trainings already? Do you see that coming down the pike more? Just like we had to use different tools in the marketing realm to figure out how to write your website better, and in security, there are, hundreds of things we have classes for. Do you see that happening?
It seems like there's a market for it. I think right now prompt writing is a little bit voodoo, and at least if my LinkedIn feed is any indication, there's people who are very much like, hey, here's the tips and tricks of how to write good prompts, and frankly, some of that's useful. So perhaps there's some training there, and I think it's the use cases beyond like use ChatGPT to replace search, or to prompt writing, or as people discover things that are closer to them than the generic use cases. There will be some training, I'd imagine. I don't know of any off the top of my head that exists now, but probably coming.
I'm taking a course
for our news story, Adrian. We can suggest somebody build something.
I can share it right now. I signed up for a course last week that I'm taking at the end of this month, and it's still open for enrollment. It's called Advanced AI Prompt Writing at sectionschool.com, and it's $250.
Wow.
It's cool. A 2-hour workshop, but I have a subscription with it used to be Section 4, and now it's Section School. They rebranded, but for $1,000 a year, you can take as many courses as you want. And I originally joined them to take some of the more MBA style courses, and really enjoyed their product strategy course because I was on the vendor side at that time, and just top quality professors and everything. A lot of the founding professors are all from the NYU Business School, NYU Stern.
Oh, that's cool. I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, I'll drop that.
I'm already on their website.
And this is with, I don't know the guy, Edmundo Ortega is the name of the guy that's teaching the course, the workshop. So I'll report back.
Go ahead.
I was just saying, I'll report back after taking the class. Go ahead, Greg.
Yeah, I think what's going to be interesting is what the training will be, right? Because there's such a, with these technologies, the user side of it is, one end, right? Like the prompt writing, like you're a user of ChatGPT, but like as soon as you get past sort of the veil of what it is, like the implementation of AI is so like it's a very complicated space. Like it's not something that most businesses are going to build their own models right now. They're certainly not going to invent their own classes of AI, right? And so I wonder, like that's sort of a like there's going to be some training for like the user side of it, but I wonder what the education long term for like, okay, you're going to major in AI at school is, and what that end of it is. Because I mean, if you think about it, there was a long time where there was no education in cybersecurity, and now there's like fairly well-defined programs and such. But it took a while. Like I wonder if that adoption and that education is going to be faster, or the math fundamentals required, sort of is a barrier of entry before those programs really get off the ground.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like Daniel Miesler and Tyler Shields, who's going to come on the show later for the news segment, are both trying to build their own digital assistants, and feeding them their own personal data. So it's I think that's a really interesting use case there, where they want something that says, hey, it's been a while since you've talked to Adrian. So I scheduled a meeting with Adrian for you guys to catch up. Just something like that.
That's cool. I wonder how we're going to teach the next generation of people to build that way.
Right. You have to understand what you want first, right? And I think that's kind of a tricky part, is to understand how this can help you, because it requires you to do a lot of inward focused, be very honest with yourself about what makes you more productive, what distracts you, things like that. So being somebody with ADHD, I'm really interested in how this can kind of help me keep on track in the very macro focused, my year-long or multi-year goals, personal goals and career goals and things like that. I would love to have something that's kind of like an advisor, right? That's keeping me on track to hit those goals.
If you build that, I will buy it.
Everybody says that, right? But I think that, and it will get built, but I think the tricky part is you knowing the input to give it, you being able to express the goal correctly.
Yeah, I mean, so I did a funny little project myself along those lines. So every week, I have to write an executive status report of what all of the groups that work for me have done for the week. And one of the inputs for that is my calendar, right? What meetings did I have this week? Who did I talk to? Right, that's a thing that I review when I start to write my my summary. And so I used I was laid up injured, and so I wrote it was 15 or 20 lines of Python that went and pulled all of the events out of my calendar, pulled all of the meetings that I had and with whom, and then used ChatGPT to summarize my calendar and give me 4 or 5 paragraphs about what did you do this week, and it was surprisingly easy to write, and it produced some pretty funny results. But at the time, I remember thinking well, this is really ham-fisted, but man, somebody could really take this and run with it.
Yeah, I think all that kind of, accomplishments, quarterly reports, stuff like that, I can't see any reason why just a couple years from now, later this year, people won't have those kinds of processes completely automated, because the data's there. All we're doing is going back through our calendars, through our notebooks, through trying to remember what we did, and something else can just automate that whole process for us. And that's not very productive time, right? Because you've already done it.
Yep. And frankly, you don't want to keep that stuff in your brain anyways. All right, I've moved on to something else. Remembering exactly. The details of the meetings that I had 2 weeks ago is not germane right now. But if I gave a summary of it, that would be helpful.
Yeah, sometimes I get to the end of the week and I'm like, holy crap, is it already the end of the week? What happened? Where did I spend my time? I actually used a product called, am I going to blank on it? Rescue Time. I think it's called Rescue Time. And again, it's pretty invasive, like Grammarly, where you have to give it access to your browser and you run an agent on all your systems, on your phone, on your tablet. And it'll tell you at the end of the week, you spent this much time on the phone, this much time in Slack, this much time reviewing this category of website. But a lot of work has to go into that for it to be able to tell you all that stuff.
Do they send your data to anyone to market to you? Like, oh, it looks like you spent a bunch of time doing this. I better send you, I better send you some dog food so that your dog doesn't starve. I can imagine that data being very valuable to those who are trying to build consumer profiles on you.
Absolutely. Yeah. I hope they don't, but Rescue Time is the product. I did not read the EULA closely.
Uh-oh.
All right. Well, that's, as we wrap up here, any last thoughts, Greg, before we let you go?
I would say the future is bright, but, we just got to, this isn't, from a risk perspective, it isn't something that should be, it's not as scary as I think people are making it out to be. And it's like everything else, we're going to digest it and use it for the powers of good.
Awesome. Good stuff. Well, thank you so much for joining us on Enterprise Security Weekly today. This is, I love having these kinds of conversations where we're just kind of brainstorming about the future, where things are going to go.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
All right, stay tuned. When we come back, we're going to talk infrastructure security and building a business around open source with Ev Consovoy from Teleport.